Welcome to the Extraordinary Acts for Others podcast, brought to you by the extraordinary friends here at Freedom's Ring. We are excited to celebrate the extraordinary goodness being done right here in our extraordinary country by some truly extraordinary people. It is our sincere hope that we will excite your spirit, and after listening to today's podcast, you will excitedly go out and do your own extraordinary acts for others in your community. Are you ready? Let's get excited. Extraordinary Acts for Others podcast, and fulfilling part of your week with goodness. I am the host, Sarah Hunold, and the founder of Freedom's Ring, a nonprofit led by military families with the mission of creating an even more extraordinary America. We do this by doing service events in our communities and by celebrating the extraordinary acts for others we see being done by others. I'm really excited to introduce you to our extraordinary guest, Kyle Barger. He's a small business owner here in Columbus, Ohio, who also started a local nonprofit called MakeADay. They have the mission to make a stranger's day by spreading love and kindness. He brings a really neat perspective to our conversation because he is in both the for-profit and not-for-profit worlds. But before we get to that conversation, we have our 3 things to know about Freedom's Ring. First, we want to remind you that we're about to go on our Hard Work of Freedom tour from May through July. So if you want to join us on an event, go to www.freedomsringusa.org/hardworkoffreedomtour, and there you can see the events that we're going to sponsor us. We have some sponsorship opportunities available. The next 2 things to know about us are about our name. So people ask us, where does Freedom's Ring come from? And one of the things that we really want to focus on is the ring to freedom is responsibility. And we see responsibility in our patriotism is that bold love for our neighbors and our fellow countrymen and women. When we are responsible and serving them, we bring out the best in our country. We also want to focus on our initials a lot, which is FR. And so we use that when we call our members friends. We use a capital FR to talk about that. We also say when you become a friend, you have joined our family. And we focus on that because we want to focus a lot on the relationships. When we have good relationships in our lives, we are able to better come up with better outputs for our lives. So by focusing on relationships, focusing on friends and family, we really bring that out. And we have a great definition for family that I heard that we use in our organization, and that stands for forget about me, I love you. So if you make family an acronym, forget about you, and that's what our family is how can we serve each other. So those are our 3 things to know, is our Hard Work of Freedom tour, the ring to freedom is responsibility, and we're all about FR, being friends and family around here. And now, here's our conversation, which I got to sit down in person with Kyle Barger. So I hope you look forward to it. So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us how MakeADay was started with you.
So my name is Kyle Barger. I'm 33. I grew up in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. Bounced all over the country working for a steel company, Omaha, Nebraska, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, St. Louis, Missouri, and just moved back to Columbus about 3 years ago. In that transition back home, I started a company called Champion Trading Group, which is a steel trading company here in Columbus. And when that company saw some success, I felt like it was my responsibility to help give back to the community. Part of that was finding other charitable organizations and not necessarily finding one that fully aligned with what I was passionate about, but also not being stuck just giving to one type of group or one type of to do something on our own. And that allowed us to have the freedom to give how we wanted and the flexibility to give to who we wanted. It all started in 2016. My cousin and I went to Chipotle in the short north, and we bought some burritos to pass out to the homeless men and women that we usually see hanging out in the downtown area. Passed out the burritos and wished, some positive thoughts and went back to our jobs. And we did it again about a week or two later, and we made the mission of, not to be as shy this time, but to maybe engage more. So we bought 4 burritos this time, but we actually sat and enjoyed eating them with 2 homeless men, Craig and Bo Campbell. Enjoyed eating them with 2 homeless men, Craig and Bo Campbell. And Bo shared his story with us, which was a pretty powerful one. He's a military vet who's back in Columbus. He's lost a finger working in a factory in the past. He's got a family, but he's been on the streets for, I think, at least 6 years. And he's battling colon cancer. He has all these issues, but he came to us from a very interpersonal or human level that we got to connect with him on. So we felt that giving him a burrito was not good enough. So for the next 3 hours, we walked around the short north. We went to a thrift store. We bought him new clothes. Backpack was broken, so we bought a necktie that we fixed one of the straps. Broken, so we bought a necktie that we fixed one of the straps with. Filled up his water bottle, got him some canned goods, even went to Kroger's to get him some Depends. And we finished that day with eating ice cream in Goodale Park and feeding squirrels sunflower seeds. And I remember my cousin and I walked away, and maybe $30 to $50, but it was one of the best days we had both had in a really, really long time. And then the idea spurred of, well, why can't we do this on a bigger scale? And my cousin Alex owns Street Time Food Truck in Columbus, and we got the idea that, we'll get permission from one of his partners that feed as many homeless people or just people who could use a free meal we could. And that's how it started, and we've learned quite a bit since.
So the events that you do, are they more like the food truck and open to the public, or are they more find a person and change that life?
Yeah, so we try not to discriminate, because it could be somebody who makes $1 million that could just use a little bit of love and a smile. But we feel that with the homeless community in Columbus, we can provide the most impact. So typically we will set up in city lots where we'll get a permit and we'll hood off some meters, and in an area where we have volunteers, myself included, who will spend that whole week leading up to it passing out event cards. And that card is essentially your ticket to get in. So it allows us to then kind of control who we can serve, who we want to serve, but also to make sure that it gives us a little bit of decision making if somebody shows up who's intoxicated on drugs, who is just not looking to create a positive experience for those around them. And so we use that card as kind of an admission ticket, but typically we're catering to the homeless. And what our pop-up events look like is we'll have that food truck, and we're providing food for everybody there. We also, as in Rebecca, has B-Rose Beauty Bar up in Powell, so she'll bring some of her girls down and set up a tent to do free haircuts and shaves. And then in the wintertime, we'll have a winter clothing drive, so coats, blankets, hats, whatever they need. Or in the summertime, a clothing boutique, or we'll have ice cream, cookies from just local partners, and just try to make it a special 3 hours for them to have lunch and just kind of kick their feet up and relax.
I think one of the common criticisms that I see or that we get as an organization is sometimes the impact that we feel that we're making isn't solving the issue. And I always we wouldn't have the capacity to solve a issue like homelessness or any other major issue. How do you respond to that, where you hand out a free meal and knowing that made the moment and not the change?
Yeah. So obviously, whenever you're trying to do something for a good reason, any kind of criticism's tough. And especially early on in your charge, it probably affects you more than later, where you learn to just kind of let it go by. But obviously with homelessness, our goal is not to just feed somebody or to love on them for a few hours, only to have them come back in a month to do the same thing. It's to help give them that encouragement or support to fight that homelessness and to take it a step further to find a job, find a residency, find a way to stand on their own feet. What we've learned is, I'll throw out a statistic that I'm just winging here, but if we service 10 people, 9 of them are probably not going to beat homelessness in this year, or maybe even in the next year. And even if we find them a job, they may relapse on drugs, or they may prefer that homeless lifestyle. And that's something we've just learned from doing so many events and connecting with these men and women. But at the end of the day, that's their choice. And our job that we feel is to just show them that there is a path beyond that if they want to take that. It's not our job to choose the life they want to lead, but we do get criticism for that. What does giving somebody a burger and a new coat do? If anything, it probably helps them stay homeless because it supports that life. It doesn't force them to become resourceful. But hey, as a human, on a human level, just feeling loved and supported goes so much further than a burger or a haircut.
Your mission is bigger than pop-up events. It talks about spreading positivity, spreading love, and really kind of more focusing on that MakeADay name that you have rather than support system for someone. Do you guys, I guess 2 questions is, do you guys have like passing out resources to other organizations where they can give further support, and or why is it so important about the love and positivity to spread that in the community versus thinking deeper in the issue?
Yeah, so to us, MakeADay, the name is like, that's our mission. Again, we tend to target the homeless community because of the resources we have at this time allow us to do a lot of good for events for Children's Hospital, where we put together do-it-yourself Valentine's Day kits. And again, some of those kids come from wealthy households, some come from low-income households, but at the end of the day, we just want them to feel loved and supported and that somebody's thinking of them. Other organizations have the resources to donate a lot of money. That's not us yet. So we can 3 hours we spent with Bo for $30 to $50. That was so much more powerful for Alex and I, and hopefully for Bo, than cutting a check for $1,000 or some of these other bigger projects that people do. So we want to use our time to connect with people on that level, and we want to try to make their day regardless of who they are. I just recently got back from Florida where I took my daughter to Disney World, and I got the idea, why not do a scholarship or a competition or a challenge, or find a family who wouldn't be able to normally provide that for their kids or have that experience, or maybe time's running out for one of their little ones, to provide that for them. And send a family to Disney. So just things like that, that's something that could, make a lifelong memory for somebody. That's the kind of stuff we like.
You talk a lot about giving your time, and you're a young man, you have your own business that you're running, your time schedule.
Yeah, it's tough. I grew up pretty blue collar, and money was tight. So the lesson there, without realizing it, was when I was young, I have time. I don't have money, but I have time. So I can put effort into things. I can put my time into things. I can't just go buy things. I have to trade my time for money. I still think like that a lot, and obviously as I run a business, I try to be the best father I can, still have a little bit of a personal life, run the nonprofit, juggle all these things. It's not always easy to trade time, and the beauty of what we're doing with from that organization, but we have so many people that see what we're doing and kind of rally to it, that's helped me dissipate the time that I have to invest, where I have other people that are willing to help and believe in our cause, and that's been awesome. But it's certainly hard to make time. So just recently we had the polar vortex roll through, and we had Kent Smith Photography in Pickerington doing it. So we had 2 different groups raising and collecting coats, blankets, hats, scarves for us. We got the idea the day before the polar vortex was coming that we need to get these items now and distribute them right away instead of waiting till the end of the month. So that took 3 days. So that took 3 days away from me doing anything with, the steel company. So there's definitely some days where I'm like, man, I got to figure out how to balance the time a little bit. But at the end of the day, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, people aren't going to remember my time trading steel, but they might remember some of this stuff. And I think my kids would be more proud of this.
That goes to the sentiment, strive for significance rather than success. I'm kind of curious on what in your upbringing made you focus more on that at 33, thinking about the legacy that you would have or how your time would be remembered?
Well, I got lucky on that one. I probably wouldn't have learned that lesson because, again, growing up poor, every emphasis was on money. You needed to make money to have a comfortable life. You needed money to go on vacation. You needed money to pay your bills, to send your kids to a good school or whatever that was. Well, when I started that company and the money came very quick, I realized that it wasn't money that was the success. I realized that it wasn't money that was the success or what I was after. Money, if anything, was it was very hollow. So you finally catch that carrot at the end of the stick, and you realize that carrot is not really making me happy. And then I remembered my grandfather, who had a pretty full life of service, Ralph Emmerich, and he's a Columbus. Members that have come and gone in my life, you know, he's still talked about, and we still look back on his memory so fondly. So to me, like, if anything, legacy is all we've got. That's all we can pass down to our kids. If anything, passing money down to the next generation a lot of times is a disservice to them. So why not pass down that work ethic or that?
This is like a second business that you have. And I'm curious on how it's similar and how it's dissimilar as running the organization and running your own business.
Yeah. No, they're so different, but they shouldn't be. So I feel like in business with my steel company, my responsibility is to make as much money as I can, because then I can provide more jobs for people I care about. I can provide more value to my clients. I can give more money to MakeADay or to charity. So that thought process is, you know, some will look at that as a greed thing. We'll look at that as a greed thing, and I say no, it's a responsibility thing. The harder I work and the better I do there, the more good I can do with that. With MakeADay, we're constantly thinking, hey, how can we do things cost effectively? How can we save money? How can we do this? How can we grow this as fast as we can without spending money? But at the end of the day, you can't run a business. You have to run a nonprofit like a business. And so we're slowly transitioning into that, whether it's going to be apparel or whatever, but find some way that MakeADay can sustain itself. So if my steel company were to explode tomorrow and not be there to support it, how is MakeADay going to continue? And I think part of that's going to be hiring people to make that. Their full-time focus. That's nerve-wracking for me, because I want to be proud of saying, if you donate $100, $100 goes to feeding somebody who's homeless or towards something we care about. But if we really want to grow this and help even more people, we probably have to treat it more like a business, and we haven't been.
That's been one of the biggest misconceptions that I've seen. They forget about the scaling, or the importance of scaling, and that you need money into marketing. You need money into professionalizing, that what you're willing to pay for is what you're willing to get. And so, yeah, your $5 right now could buy a burrito, but your $5 combined with other money, or your $5 to raise. What other misconceptions do you see as a business owner and entrepreneur about people understanding nonprofits?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, a lot of times nonprofits are criticized for that compensation piece. And a great example I always use is, if I'm going to donate goods, I always take them to the Salvation Army, because the CEO of the Salvation Army makes $30,000 a year. The CEO of Goodwill, I think he makes like $3 million a year. So from an outsider, I'm like, I want to support the group that's living the mission. But could there be an argument made that because the guy from Goodwill is such a savvy CEO and business creator and visionary, that money's justified because he can grow it and do more good? I don't know the answer to that, but I think with the nonprofit world, a lot of times they think the talent is not as good as the private sector, because that should be challenged, because I think there's a lot of people out there that want to work in that world because that's what they're passionate about, who could still be just as talented as somebody making 5 times the salary.
You talked about your pop-up events and how those are kind of supported by local businesses. How do you see the response that you get from local businesses? To support your mission and to support your cause?
So that's interesting. That has definitely evolved. Our first pop-up event, we went up and down High Street and we told every business in the short north who we are and what we were doing, and none of them knew who we were. And if anything, we just put a flyer in the window. Our success rate was maybe like 30 or 40%. You know, people were just like, yeah, whatever, okay, put a flyer up. You know, now it's gotten to the point where we've had business owners reach out to us to try to support what we do. We had an art gallery called Not Cheap Gallery in the Short North, just saying, hey, I don't know what I can do, but like I can provide my space for meetings or whatever. We're probably going to work with them to do an art show in the spring or summer this year. Piece of Cake Bakery. Laura, the owner there, saw our mission, and not only has she donated cookies and treats for the homeless, but like she even had a bake sale where we didn't even know she was doing this, and she did. They see us out there. They see our banner as we have it for these pop-up events. They see what we're doing, and people who in the Short North are passionate about it. So it's definitely a slow process, and anyone else who's going to go down this route, whether it is an entrepreneur or as a nonprofit, just know it's going to be kind of a slow roll. And as long as you're living it authentically and your mission is still to do good and not necessarily to self-promote, it'll grow, and more people should rally behind your cause if they support it.
Have you done other volunteer work with other organizations, or I guess what was missing that led you to start your own organization?
Yeah, good question. So I guess my evolution there is my grandfather was really big into philanthropy growing up, and I remember actually being a little bit embarrassed because he always had, Jesus is number one, Jesus saves on all of his shirts and on his truck, and he'd come to my baseball games and I was like 8 or 9, and he was always known as the Jesus guy, and I'd be like, but watching him be so selfless and all the things that he did in the community, as I got older, realized how much courage that took, or how much time that took away from his family, or just how committed he was to it. So I went to a private high school, St. Charles here in Columbus, and they forced us to do volunteer work. And I remember I volunteered for the Muscular Dystrophy Association in their summer camp. That was a life-changing experience for me. That wasn't just going and having a fun experience at a summer camp. It was connecting with a child who needed somebody, to help them live their quality of life. And then from there, I moved to Omaha, and I was volunteering at a soup kitchen with a friend. I did Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and all of these things. What seemed like at first were check marks I had to do for high school or for college eventually just became things I wanted to do with my free time. They felt like I needed that in my life to have a little bit of fulfillment in that zone. And then be on that entrepreneurial kick where I was like, hey, instead of working for somebody else, work for yourself. Then the philanthropy kind of came with it, where I said, well, instead of supporting somebody else who has all this overhead and pays all these people and does all these things, let's do it ourselves. And it was, if anything, just kind of that same type of mentality.
I also went to a Catholic school where we had, and then how seamless it becomes into your life. Do you think having people volunteer early does that, or do you think that was more of like your faith formation and more of, I guess, like thinking about your friends who went there, like, did they pick it up as much as you did?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a great question because, the way my personality is, the more something's forced on me, the more I want to rebel or do the opposite or fight against that. So you would think, whether it was being, told you have to go to church or you have to volunteer, you have to do these things, typically I want to run the other direction. So, but knowing that about myself, I'm still doing this stuff. So I'd say it probably has to have some kind of impact. And I think, if anything, a lot of my peers from high school and college who had that in them, maybe they're not going out and starting their own charities, but I think they're just much more receptive to helping others or under someone kind of bears that cross and just they're ready to support.
Where do you find your biggest support, or I guess the most surprising support that you have for MakeADay?
That's a good question. I mean, none of it's really been surprising. My immediate family has been very supportive. My extended family has been very supportive. My extended family of just cousins, aunts, and uncles have been very supportive. And obviously, because they were all seeing what my grandfather did, they were all kind of part of that, perspective and seeing what he committed in his life. But the community support, I've been so surprised with small business owners in the short good for their business. It hurts their foot traffic, their ability to make a living, yet they still have these warm hearts that they still want to help the person who counterintuitively is probably not the best thing for their business, sitting out front and connect with those members of their community. Right now there's a big issue because some new businesses in the short north that it's a play on keeping their employees safe, so that way no one's going to come in and try to rob that location. But what it really feels like is it's their way of saying we don't want to necessarily feed the homeless or people who all they have is cash or don't have a debit card or credit card, and it's created a big kind of conversation in Columbus. And that's actually kind of nice to see how many business owners and people support, hey, you should be able to serve anybody. It speaks to a lot about our community.
What's the biggest dream and aspiration that you have for this? Like, do you have a role aspiration that you have for this? Like, do you have a role that you want this to play in?
Yeah, so I guess there's two answers to that. The humble micro version would be, no, I just want to continue on and just help as many people as I can before I get hit by that bus or before my last day comes. But if I'm being honest, it's become an opportunity because I have these close, dear friends in so many other places. And I get so much support from people from afar on Facebook and social media where they say, we love what you're doing, and they'll make donations or they want to, do an event. But it's getting to the point where now we've got two different people in Omaha who say, hey, we want to do a MakeADay Omaha. Two different people in Omaha who say, hey, we want to do a MakeADay Omaha. And in Philadelphia and in St. Louis and these other cities. And I would love nothing more than to help empower people to do the same version of this out there. And almost I guess because I'm business minded, the franchise model comes to mind, but I would just love to see other people see how on and just do some good. And there's a little bit of paperwork and, filing to get your 501c3 and that. But at the end of the day, just show people it's really easy to just go rent a food truck or go do this or go provide some haircuts or do something to make somebody else's day and empower them to just go do it. And if we can help just show them the model, or see these pop up all over the country, the world, whatever, where people just take it upon themselves. If they need a name or a banner or a 501c3 to fly behind, we'll do all the hard, heavy lifting for them, but just give them the chance to go out and make somebody smile. It's
amazing how quickly the organic part happens once you're doing the effort, once you're showing the effort, once you're showing the model for that. People do see, hey, that's something that I could do, or this is something that our community needs. One of the things that I really like about your organization is how local focused it is. It really feeds the spirit of Columbus and shorter term goals just here in the local community.
Yeah, so we just are getting into 2019, and one of the fun things we're doing is I've been introduced to Nina and Virginia West, and they are local performers and drag queens here in town, but are nationally recognized, and they raise so much money for different charities. So we're going to do an event with them this spring. We've got a golf outing coming up in June. We'll do our annual cornhole tournament in August. We'll be doing pop-up events all the way through, but we'll also just have so many other just little events in between. But the cool thing is, again, a year ago we were an organization that no one really knew who we were, and now we're partnering up with the movers and shakers in Columbus. And as you mentioned before, I think a lot of people, when they see oh, this is such a big undertaking, this is such a big process, if we can change that narrative in their heads, they could be doing all this stuff in Omaha, in Philadelphia, St. Louis, all these other cities, or even different parts of Columbus, like you said. And one of the really cool things about it for me too is my steel company is big in our industry and moves a lot of money, but nobody knows about that or me from that here in Columbus. If anything, I know people from MakeADay, and that was not by design, but that has been such a cool lesson for me that I've had opportunities to connect with just some really awesome people I would have never had because I would have just did my thing in steel, right? And steel was a domestic, nationwide company for us, but it's just opened so many doors and had so many cool experiences. And I'm just so excited for that in 2019. Just the people I get to partner with, the people I get to sit down and have a meeting with, the fact that I can call somebody and they're like, who, Kyle, what? And they're like, oh, but MakeADay, cool. Yeah. We saw you guys on 614 now, or we saw you.
Confidence, having a good name behind you has, I just think about even reaching out to you or reaching out to other people for the podcast that I was I don't know that I would have ever sent the email without a force behind me to say hey, this is something reputable that you'd respond to rather than you'd respond to rather than some person that wants to talk or whatnot. That it is really empowering to be able to, I guess, shamelessly knock on anybody's door and just extend the offer. And if they don't want it, then they don't want it, and you move on. And if not, you have a conversation with somebody that you never thought you would get to have a meeting with.
And the beauty of that is, like, if that's your mission and it's authentic, like, how easy is it to talk to somebody because their guard's down? They're not like, oh, so-and-so's calling me to try to sell me something or to get me to sign up for this program, or they want a job or they want something. It's like, hey, this is somebody who's taking on that I also live in or that I also support. So when they call, they're like, of course they want to give you their time or lend some support, or some of them might even go above and beyond to come to an event or to write a check. So I agree with you. I think it was definitely not the plan, but it's been like this really cool perspective gained from it.
You mentioned your You mentioned your grandfather a couple of times. Do you have any other models for service in your life that you've followed, or especially as you deal with MakeADay, that you've kind of learned about as you're building the organization?
Yeah, so my grandfather was
Yeah,
so my grandfather was obviously the foundation of that, just seeing what he did, and this was back before social media, so like he built a really big name for Bethlehem on Broad and a few other charities, but like it wasn't through social media, and it wasn't for any reason other than he was just the guy every Sunday out there delivering. I got to connect with him just because of a MakeADay event, and they are all based on like the Big Lebowski, like the dude type icon, but they use that as an excuse for, people to get together. And whether it's a fundraiser that involves, bourbon tastings, street tacos, like something cool and interesting, but the proceeds then go to different charities and to help those in need. Or obviously, like, again, Nina and Virginia West, like they're entertainers, but like they've raised millions of dollars to benefit all kinds of other charities. Like we want to do something with, animal shelters, and just see how other people do it. And even yourself, like with your charity, just there's so much to learn from each other. See how other people do it. And even yourself, like with your charity, just there's so much to learn from each other. Like we're new at this too, and we try to help as many people as we can, but we'd be fools not to think that we could learn from all the other people we interact with. Well, Sarah, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad we could connect, and I really look forward to see what we can do with both of our groups together in 2019.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kyle, for inviting me into your home and to being a guest on the Extraordinary Acts for Others podcast. Your pop-up events and the community has certainly made people's day, and I love how you remain focused on spreading love around Columbus. So you can follow MakeADay. Their Facebook and Instagram is MakeADay HQ, or you can go to their website, which is makeaday.fun. And so now it's time to celebrate our spirited stories of the week. These are extraordinary acts for others that have so much spirit that we just wanted to bring attention to them and celebrate the extraordinary goodness happening in our country right now. So if you see anything, feel free to use the hashtag Extraordinary Acts for Others or tag us at Freedom's Ring USA, and we will proudly share the good work that's happening in our communities. First, we go to find a library in his local community. So he decided to build one and open it up in his own front yard. This idea had gone so well with the neighborhood kids that the town is now opening up a second Logan's Little Library next to the town gazebo this summer. This is the power, an idea, and having a positive contribution to your community. Next, we go to Alexandria, Virginia, where Alfred Street Baptist Church raised over $100,000 by asking members to fast from spending on non-essential items. This money went to pay off outstanding student debt for 34 graduating college students. The university president said, "This generosity is a reminder how our selfless acts of kindness can be multiplied to have a profound impact on the lives of others." So now we have the chance for you to make the profound impact on the lives of others. This week's Extraordinary Acts for Others challenge is inspired by Janine Stange, who is the first person to sing the national anthem in all 50 states. She's opening up the opportunity to write Medal of Honor recipients, and these letters will be delivered to these recipients on Medal of Honor Day, which is March 25th. So we have all the detail in our show notes, like the address and the website. Thank you for listening to the Extraordinary Acts for Others podcast. To continue to hit the subscribe button and rate us and leave us a review. By sharing this, it will help spread the word and invite others to fill part of their week with goodness. Know that you are extraordinary and have extraordinary abilities to do extraordinary acts for others in your community. By doing ordinary service with extra spirit, bringing out that goodness. So come, enter the ring, be a friend, and join our family.